Hey guys, today we're going to be doing a game hacking tutorial on the Warcraft 3 Reforged game. So you might be wondering, why are we messing with Warcraft 3? Originally, this game was super popular back about 15 years ago, and it kind of died down because it stopped getting updates from Blizzard. And now that they've done Reforged, I'm excited about playing it again, but there has been some negative publicity about it, so I don't know that it's really going to pick up popularity. So the main thing that made Warcraft popular is this custom games section. If you look on here, you'll see a whole bunch of different maps. And these are created by random programmers using the map editor for the Warcraft 3 game. And that map editor allows you to make any kind of game you want that's really different than the original base game. So from Warcraft 3, a whole bunch of different game genres were created. Things like tower defenses, MOBAs, and this is what kept the game alive for so long. The base game is kind of a mix between city building and fighting, and Warcraft 3 also spawned into StarCraft, which is the same game, only with space units instead of fantasy units. But the most popular games in the world right now, for example, League of Legends, which is a MOBA, spawned out of Warcraft 3. And there's also DotA, which spawned out of Warcraft 3. And the reason that Blizzard got bad publicity when they did the Reforged version of Warcraft is they broke a few features of the original game that made the hardcore gamers that were still playing it 20 years after it launched, made them upset. But also, they announced that the custom maps would now be owned by Blizzard instead of by the original programmer that made the map. And so that made all the map creators upset. And then also they promised a bunch of new features like new cutscenes in the campaign mode, and they under-delivered from what they promised. So they kind of upset people in multiple realms. But for me, I actually like it. It's because the thing that they did do was upgrade the graphics. And I wanted to be able to play the game still, but I didn't want to look at graphics from 20 years ago. And they did make a few improvements to the map editor, which could allow better custom maps to get created in the future. So if you wanted to just play a random type of game, you could click on any of these random maps and hit join. And on the right side, it says preview unavailable. As soon as I hit join, it will download the map, and then I can play with somebody online. But the game, since it's not that popular, you're going to be waiting 15-20 minutes for other people to join this particular game. So instead, I can back out, and I should either pick a game that's really popular, or I could filter based on the number of players and start with games that are almost full and start with those. But the problem is, so say like I picked this DotA. This is not the DotA 2 that Valve released. This is the original DotA that a programmer made inside the custom app of Warcraft 3 before DotA 2 got created. But anyone I play with online here, they're going to really understand this game of DotA or Aspect of Doom or Legion TD. And so if you're a new player, they're going to get upset at you for not playing very well. So what I would suggest, download a map and then hit back and go into single player mode, custom games. And here it'll show everything that you've downloaded. So if I scroll down, I could find whatever game I just barely downloaded, and I could try it out in single player mode and decide if I really like it enough to play it online with other people and practice a little bit so that I don't get yelled at for playing poorly. But that's the custom games. But there's two other features of Warcraft that are really good. So first of all, campaign. So there's multiple races in Warcraft. So this first one is orcs and the second one is humans, and I have to unlock the other ones. But if I were to play as orcs, and I guess I'll go into story mode, which is kind of like easy mode, it'll probably give me a cutscene, and I'll quit out of this. The graphics are pretty good in the updated cutscenes, but so it'll kind of give me a story of what the characters are doing, and I'll skip out of those, and then I can kind of control my units and follow the quests that it gives me. So I've got this hero, and it wants me to navigate around the map, find certain waypoints, which maybe I'll encounter enemies or allies, and maybe build a base and etc. But this is kind of like tutorial mode right now, so it'll get more complicated in future levels of the campaign. So let me quit out of the campaign mode and show you just regular mode, and then I'll show you a custom game that we're going to hack. So if I went into custom games, and instead of going into the download folder, I just pick one of these existing ones. These are maps created by Blizzard, and they don't have any modifications to the base game. They're just different maps. Whereas the downloaded maps, they're like mods that are completely different from the base game. So I'm going to go into advanced options and just change a few settings. I want visibility to be always visible, so that way we can see the map. And then go back to map information, I can hit create. So looking at the mini map, you can see the yellow circles are gold mines. The little houses are like neutral shops. And then the red X and the blue X are me or the computer. So I'm going to play against the computer. I'll put him on easy mode, and I'll just so I can kind of explain the game without him killing me quick. I'll just put it on 50%, and then I can choose which race I want to be. So I'll be human, I guess, and I don't really care who he is. So I'll hit start, and I think this game is really fun. And if you look at the updated graphics, they're really not too bad. So I've got a town hall here in the center, and that's where I do all my upgrades from. And then these are my peasants. And I'll first send them to the gold mine so that they can start gathering gold. At the top, you can see my resources. I have 500 gold and 150 wood and 5 out of 12 food. So the gold, you can see it's increasing because the peasants are gathering gold. And the food is 5 because I have 5 peasants on the screen. But it's /12 because I can have a maximum of 12. So if I want to train another peasant, I go to the town hall, train a peasant, and then I can right click, for example, on the trees, and that'll make a waypoint. So my town hall, anytime it creates a peasant, it'll automatically send him to the trees to start chopping wood. And at the bottom, you can see when I start, so now I'm at 6 out of 12 because of food. But when I get a whole bunch of peasants, then you can see they get queued up. So after each one is trained, it'll just start the next one in queue. And they cost, if you mouse over the peasant, it says it costs 75 gold and 1 food. So because I'm at 7, now 8, I can really only do 4. So once it gets to this further queue point, it'll stop building because I won't be able to. So I'll cancel those. And then also gold wise, since there's 75 each, I technically have enough. And actually, I think you prepay. So like right here, it says 870. If I click it, it drops down to 800. So if I unqueue it, it jumps the gold back up. So anyways, if I click on a peasant on the bottom left corner, I can click build. And then there are shortcut keys as well. So I could also hit the letter B. And then I could build some kind of building. So like maybe a tower to protect myself if the enemy comes. Now in the middle here, I can see the mini map and I can see what he's building. So they're the race of night elf, which is, so their buildings are trees that are living creatures instead of wood buildings like the humans create. And because I've been explaining, he's obviously a lot faster than me. He's already built multiple archers and he's got a hero. So he's going to win unless I start speeding up. But anyways, that's kind of the basics of the game. So you build a base, which his base is a lot more developed. And then you build army guys. And once the army guys are ready, you go attack the enemy. But there are also neutral places that you can make your unit stronger. So only the hero gains experience. But right now it's level 1. If you take your whole army and your hero together, so say down here, there are some neutral monsters to fight. If you attack them, then your hero will gain experience and the hero will gain spells, which makes your entire army stronger. And you can also capture more gold mines in order to build secondary bases. And at some point, you're going to want to go attack the enemy and destroy their base. But you can also team up with other people. So right now I'm in 1 versus 1 and the person I'm against is the AI, the computer. But I could actually, do up to, I think, 24 players at a time. And this is a very small map with only a few gold mines. But if you're doing 24 players, you would want to pick one of the larger maps. And you can be allied and help each other out. So it's a pretty fun game. And there's like a tournament mode that people play online and they rank up to see how good they are compared to other people. And but that's the base game. Now if I quit out, let me show you a custom map so you can see how different they can be. So I'm going to pick a game that I want to hack. So if I scroll down here, the game I just started playing yesterday that seemed kind of fun. We'll try hacking it. It was called Heroic Origins. I've downloaded too many maps here. So like you can see, all of these are completely different if you were to jump in and play one. But the one I've been playing, it's a tower defense. Here it is, HO, which stands for Heroic Origins. and I think the G is galaxy, and then TD is tower defense, and it's version 13. So somebody, whoever made this, has been upgrading it over and over again over time, and that's why it's version 13. So you can imagine it's going to be kind of advanced. If it was version 1, it probably wouldn't have that many features. And this one takes a minute to load, so while it's loading, I'll explain it a little bit. So my main peasant is here in the middle. He's a builder, but if I scroll up, this purple spot is a waypoint where the monsters spawn from, and down at the bottom, so they'll walk down this path, and when they get to, okay, I'll do easy mode. When they get to the far left here, this second waypoint, when they get there, they'll teleport. And this is intended to be a team game, so they would teleport to my teammates. And my job is to kill them, but if I don't kill the monsters in time, the teammates will kill my monster. And then if my teammates leak, then the teleport will take them to a secondary waypoint, and then they'll keep walking again. So in my case, since I'm playing one player, if I leak, it'll just go to my own waypoint. So if I take this builder, I can build a building real quick, and these buildings will be towers, and it gives you 4 random choices, so I'll just pick one. It doesn't matter. And if I was actually going to strategize, then it would matter. And I'll show you how interesting the game gets. So for example, this witch doctor, if I click on him, so he's just automatically attacking all the time. That's why he's considered a tower, even though he looks like a unit. And if I mouse over, it says this ability gets unlocked if I have a witch doctor and a Tauren. Well, he is the witch doctor, so I need a Tauren to unlock this extra ability, which will make him stronger. And the Tauren will also get stronger because they synergize. But over here, a headhunter would give us a secondary ability. And then over here, it says if I get this guy to level 3, he gains a third ability. So right now he's got 1 star. So if I didn't get any Taurens here, but I did get a headhunter. So if I choose this headhunter, now you can see on my first guy that ability unlocked. And also the headhunter has his ability unlocked because it's not grayed out anymore. So the towers have synergies. In order to get the star level up higher, you click this merge button. You have to build an identical unit. So I'd have to build another witch doctor and merge them together, and that would get it to 2 stars, which makes them stronger. And then once they get to 3, they gain an ability. Once they get to 5 stars, which is the maximum, that ability gets even stronger. And then also right here under inventory, you can put down different items, and the items make them stronger as well. And then over here, there's just these neutral buildings. Each building is a little shop where I can purchase upgrades. So this upgrade gives me more food. So right now I have 2 towers out of 4. If I purchase this, I could get more towers. If I purchase this, then I get lumber quicker. And lumber is how you build towers, and also how you re-roll. Because if you remember, I got random choices when I picked build. It gave me 4 random choices. At the bottom here, these keys let me re-roll to get different choices of towers. And there's like 20 different choices of towers. They're all very different. And these towers are considered tier 1. You'll notice they have the green text on them. If I roll these more expensive keys like this purple and red, then I can give the ability for a tier 2, which is purple, or a tier 3, which is orange. So obviously those are going to be stronger. So over here, upgrading to have more towers is useful, but then also paying gold to regenerate lumber faster is important, because the lumber is what lets me roll into the more expensive tiers of towers. Every time I kill a unit, I'm gaining gold, and sometimes they drop little pieces of lumber. And then once I get certain quests, so in this case the quest is to build 5 towers, then I can do an upgrade, which gives me a bonus of gold. And there's multiple upgrades you can do. Each quest is different. So after I click on this quest, once I've built the 5 towers, then a new quest will unlock. But up here, if I click on quests, there are also these hidden quests. So this one says, like, if I beat the horses 6 times, I get gold coins. But that's not gold like up here. It's actually an item. And if I equip that item on a tower, then anytime he kills something, he gets bonus gold. And so there are a bunch of different quests here. And what's interesting about this game as well is whenever the game is over, it actually saves your game. So I played this a few times, so that's why I started with these 50 Medal of Honor tokens. And I started at rank 102 when you normally should start at rank 100. And then I also got these 25 soul gems, and you get those from like beating the game or like completing certain quests. Well, these things stay with my character each game after I play, and I can use those for upgrades that stay with me forever. Whereas these towers I built, they don't stay with me forever, they're just for the current game I'm playing. So it would take me an hour to explain all the strategies behind this game and all the different neutral buildings, but each neutral building does something completely different, and the way that towers synergize is very complex. And the reason I wanted to explain all of this is because this is very different than the campaign mode, where you're following a storyline, and it's also very different than just the 1 versus 1 build a base and kill each other mode. Because in this case, you're not even playing against anyone else, you're all in a big team. And so this is a tower defense game, but there are other games like Dota or League of Legends that spawned from here, which are different from any of the modes we've talked about before. So that's what's really cool to me about Warcraft 3, is that it's kind of a tool for quickly iterating over different game ideas, and people can collaborate with each other. So I was sad that the community died down, especially when Blizzard failed with the Reforged launch, but they have promised that they're going to fix things recently, and I hope they follow through with that promise. We'll see. But anyways, let me show you for a second the map editor, because that's got a lot of coding things that will be interesting. And then also I'm going to show you how to hack this particular map, but every map will be hacked slightly differently. So I'll just show you this map for now. But just as a starting point, in Warcraft, in the base game, if you're in single player mode, there are built-in cheat codes. So if I hit the enter key, it'll let me start typing. And there are codes like greed is good. If I were to hit enter, it would give me gold and wood. And there are other codes that do other things. You can look them up online. But the programmer that made this custom map, he didn't want anyone to be able to cheat. And that's what we're going to hack. So if I hit enter on greed is good, it's going to tell me that it detected that I cheated. And so even though my gold and wood, I think, did go up, it instantly said I lose. And that it detected that I was cheating. So that's what we're going to fix so that we can cheat if we want. So I'm just going to quit out, and I'll show you how I would hack this. So first of all, if I open up battle.net, this is where you purchase the Warcraft 3 game and where you can click play. But it has this icon here called Launch Editor. So if I open that, it gives me just a base map with nothing at all. And this is a tool that people make custom maps with. So if I wanted to, I could, for example, go to like layer terrain, and it brings up this palette, and I could draw like grass, right? And then I could go to layer units, and I could put a peasant down, or I could put down a hero of some sort, or some buildings like a farm. So these units all are built into the game, so they already have certain attributes, how fast they can move, what they can attack, whether they can go on water or only on land, or whether they can fly, what upgrades they have, etc. If I go into module object editor, I can actually change the base settings on every one of these units. And this is where it actually starts getting a little bit into the coding. And you could actually imagine how a custom map would be created. And you can also think about how the original Blizzard programmers might have coded this in case you wanted to build your own the real-time strategy game, which is the genre that Warcraft 3 started with. So for example, if I take the peasant, and these are like all the properties. So if you think about an object-oriented programming language, maybe a unit would be a class and a peasant would be an instance of the class. And all of these properties would be variables inside of that class. So the damage on the peasant, it says is 0 because he's not really intended to fight, he's intended to build. But if I were to double click on this, I could set his damage higher. And now the peasant turned pink because I've modified him from the base. And same thing, his base damage has been changed. But I can modify anything in here that I want. I can make him an orc instead of a human. I could give him a different graphic to make him look like a building. I could change which buildings he's allowed to build right here. I could change which upgrades affect him. So for example, this lumber harvesting, that upgrade comes from the lumber mill. But once you've purchased that upgrade, this peasant is able to gather wood quicker. So any of these properties can be modified. As well, you can create brand new units from scratch. So I could right click and say new custom unit, or I could take a template. So say I wanted the priest, I could right click and copy and then paste him, or I could just say new custom unit. So, actually, yeah, I guess I would want to copy and paste him. So copy, come down here, paste. So now I've got like a custom priest as a starting point, and then I can modify him as much as I want. So I can still leave the original priest alone if I wanted. So, this doesn't affect the entire game. It's not affecting everyone that that plays the game. It's just my one specific map. So when I'm done creating my map, I would hit save. I'll just make a folder ctemp Warcraft 3 and my map or something. Now the type of file, so the expansion is Frozen Throne. The base game was called Reign of Chaos. So most people that play the game are going to own the expansion. So I would choose that. But then it has two modes, folder or not folder. If you don't choose a folder, it'll basically make a zip file. I'm going to choose folder so you can kind of see how it works. So I'll save this and open up my folder. So you can see all of these different files. And some of these are text files that you could read, and some might be more binary files. So if I open up Notepad and say I take this .j file, J stands for JASS, which is a custom programming language that Blizzard created. And it looks similar to like a C++, and you can Google to find out what functions are available inside of this language. But so for example, BLZ stands for Blizzard. And I'm not certain, but I would assume other Blizzard games use similar technologies. So like StarCraft, World of Warcraft, Diablo, etc. And JASS is kind of deprecated, so I should go into the settings and switch it to Lua. That's a more popular language for scripting nowadays. So it is supported in the reforged version of Warcraft 3. So that's what I would suggest. But anyways, this is code that we could learn from. And something I like, though, about the map editor, if I go into module and I do trigger editor, the code is very user-friendly for someone that's new to coding because it has a kind of a drag and drop system. So this trigger editor, that's kind of like an event system. So you can say when certain things happen, you want code to execute. But instead of writing code from scratch by hand, you can use this drag and drop. And so for example, this says the initialization of the game, that's the event. So if I wanted to add a condition, I could right click here, new condition, and it gives me a list of all the choices, or I could search. But I'll say, so say I wanted to do a game difficulty comparison. So if I click on that, then it has parameters down here. So it says difficulty level. And if I click on it, it lets me choose or like other variables. But in this case, because the comparison is on game difficulty, there's only one choice. Whereas if I chose like a unit comparison, it would show me all the different types of units here. But anyways, so it's saying equal to, if I click on that, I could do equal or I could do not equal. And then where it says normal, I click on that and I could choose easy, normal, or hard. So that's the condition. So I'm basically saying I only want to run all of these actions if it's on normal difficulty. So if I copied this trigger, pasted, say this one's normal difficulty, and then I could rename this one to hard difficulty, and then I would change this condition to hard. And then similarly for the actions, if it's on normal difficulty, maybe I create an action that like gives me a free unit or something, but on hard, maybe it wouldn't do that. It might be easier if I clicked the search and then just typed create or something. Let's see, create, and maybe I can do create space unit for searching. So yeah, now the dropdown only has two choices: create unit facing an angle, create unit facing an angle. So I guess it doesn't matter which one, but so it says I'm going to create one footman for player one red at the center of the map, facing the default building degree. So same as before, I could click any of these things and pick different settings. So I want a flying guy instead of a footman, and I want 3 of them created instead. So this allows you to write code without really writing code. And then the cool thing is, after it's saved, I could open up that code. So it's war3map.j in Notepad, and I think I need to reload it, but I could look for that code that was just generated. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, so here's my hard difficulty trigger that just got created. And I don't think I changed that one. I think it was but you can see, like, so here's an if statement. It says get game difficulty equals map difficulty hard. Then, so it helps you learn how to write real code. And then here's how it's creating those units. So under normal difficulty, HGYR is the code for that flying machine that I chose, but it's going to create 3 of them for player 0, which is the red. And the function it's calling is create units. So kind of interesting. So I really like this map editor. So I'm sad that they upset their community because I think they really could have kept the game going. But this is supposed to be a hacking tutorial. So there are a million different features in here. I'm not going to go over them all, But if you have any interest in this, I suggest you buy the game and try it out. But I'm going to show you how I would hack that tower defense I was showing you. So first, let's pull up the folder where the games are stored when they're downloaded. So it's going to be in my Documents folder. So click Documents, and then Warcraft 3, and then Maps. Oh, and one thing I want to mention first. Under Custom Map Data, the game I was playing was that Galaxy Tower Defense. And if I open this up, this file is my saved game data that is retained from game to game. So I mentioned that because I'd already played once, I had 50 metal tokens that stayed with me, even though I was starting a brand new game where I had to start building towers from scratch. It remembered that I had earned 50 tokens from the previous game that I had played. So this file here is how it does that. So it's code that we just barely showed, but it has all this random gibberish. This is basically what's remembering what my character has that's going to be retained from game to game. And it's specific to the tower defense I was playing. It's unrelated to every other map. And I don't know what any of these symbols mean. Essentially, it's encoded or encrypted. So you would have to know the format of how it works. But if you, say, pulled up a calculator and you also pulled up an ASCII chart, ASCII table. So the letter V in ASCII, which is how letters are represented. Where is it? These are uppercase. I need the lowercase ones. So it says that its decimal equivalent is 118. If I took 118, let me switch into programming mode on the calculator. So I'm going to go to decimal, type in 118, then I'm going to switch to binary. I'm going to copy this. So essentially this V is this. Now I could do the same thing for the ASCII of 4 and the ASCII of the ampersand and the ASCII table of the capital S. Each one's going to have a whole bunch of zeros and ones just in different places, right? So I'm just randomly changing ones and zeros. So just pretend that this is the letter V, this is the number 4, and this is the ampersand. Well, I mentioned that the string is like encrypted or encoded in some way. So I'd have to actually analyze the code of the tower defense game I'm playing to know what these mean. But most likely, each one of these zeros and ones stands for something. So for example, this first one might be whether or not I've ever beat the game before. This next one might be the difficulty level that I beat it at. And this next one might be the number of tokens that I've earned. And there's a whole bunch of things that carry over from game to game, different stats or whatever. Each of these could be storing those. Now, binary can only store true and false. So whether or not you've beaten the game before could be stored on a single spot. But like the number of tokens I've had, if it's only this one spot, then the maximum would be 1. So the number of tokens is actually probably stored in like these 4. Because with binary, each number can hold 2 values. And each time you add an additional number, so in this case I have 4, it times it by 2 for how many you can have. So 2 times 2 is 4. So there are 4 combinations if I have 2 characters. If I times it again, it goes to 8. So with 3, there are now 8 combinations. And with 4, there are now 16 combinations of zeros and ones. So maybe these 4 would store some kind of value that has 16 possible choices. And then maybe these next set of like 12 stores the number of tokens I have. So that's how the save code works. And the reason that will be useful is when I hack the game, I'm going to have to modify the actual map file. And if I were to play online with other people, they would notice that I have the wrong map file. And also, whoever's hosting the game chooses which map file to use. So if I join somebody else's game, I can't choose to use my hacked version. And if I host the game, somebody else, when they join, will notice that it's probably hacked because it will force them to download the map file from me. But if they already have this game, they're going to be surprised that it's downloading something. So they might notice that it's been hacked. And if you really wanted to cheat, you don't want to be detected. But what you could do is play the game with the hacked version just in order to get a new code generated. If this saved file says that you've beaten the game, but you can't actually beat the game without cheating, well, you play the game in the hacked mode, beat the game, let it save your profile to say that you have beaten the game, and then you switch to the unhacked version of the game. And then when it loads your profile and tracks your history of what happened in your previous games, it'll see that you've already beaten it. You get like a bonus if you've beaten the game before. So your next game's a little bit easier. So nobody could detect if your profile was generated through a hacked version of the game. They would only notice if you're currently playing a hacked version of the game, not if you previously played a hacked version of the game. So that's something useful to keep in mind while we're hacking this. But that's under the Documents folder, Warcraft 3, map data, custom map data, and then the name of the map. But instead, I'm going to go into the maps folder instead of the custom map data, and then under download, and I'm going to find this game that I've been playing. So it's HO, which I believe for Heroic, yeah, there it is, Heroic Origins Galaxy TV. So the first thing I want to do is I don't want to ever accidentally modify the real copy. So I'm just going to hit Control C or right click to copy, and then I'm going to make a brand new folder called hacked. So that way in Warcraft 3, I'll have a downloads folder, which is the default where all your maps get stored. And then I'll have an extra folder called hacked where I'm going to paste a copy of the map. That way I can keep track of which is which. And if I wanted to, I could even rename this file to like -hacked or something. But first, so I'm just going to close the map that I was working on. Oh, and something interesting. So I mentioned all of these files. If you are working on your own map, having it in folder mode like this, where each file is separate, is useful if you're using a source control tool. So what most people use is called GitHub. If I went to github.com, and I'm not going to bother to log in, but say I search for like Warcraft 3 or something. This shows a whole bunch of different repositories. And if you go, and this isn't the right game, this is World of Warcraft, but if you go inside of a repository, you can see all of the files. And what's cool is these commits right here. This is a history. So you can see for each day what changes they made. And if you looked at a specific file, you could see what lines of code they changed. And that's really useful if you're working as a team or even by yourself. You know, say you make a bug today, but you don't notice it for a week. Well, if it keeps a history of every change you made, you could go back to previous versions of your code until the bug disappears. And then that will tell you essentially which day you created it on. And then once you can narrow it down to which specific commits or which day, then you can look at the individual lines of code that were changed, and that might help you figure out where your bug is. So if you're going to make your own map file, I would suggest being in folder. But once you're ready to actually distribute it to people, you want to save it in archive mode, which is like a zip file, because nobody wants to deal with all of these random files. So the place that the map was stored, I already mentioned, was in the download, and I copied it to hacked. It has this W3X extension. So this is just one archive that internally has similar files to what I created in the map editor. Now I'm going to open this in the map editor, and I fully expect this to fail. So I'm going to hit open, download, scroll down to hacked, pick my file, and hit OK. Now the reason I expect it to fail is map makers do not like people to hack their maps. And so they keep a clean working copy on their computer for while they're editing. But whenever they're all done and they want to distribute a new version to people, they intentionally break the map and they use a protection tool, or possibly they do it on their own. And essentially what they do, so if I go back to my folder, they understand, because they've been modding Warcraft for a long time, they understand what each of these files does and what format they are and what tool you can open each one in. And some of these files are needed by the game itself, but some of the files are only needed by the map editor. And so what they do is they either delete the files that are only needed by the map editor, or they intentionally break something that's needed by the map editor. So say I take like a hex tool. Let me open up one real quick. So this is a hex editor. If I knew that this W3I was only needed by the map editor, and I'm just picking a file at random, in this hex editor, so you'll notice here that some of it's human readable. So like right here, it says just another Warcraft 3 map. And that's what I called my map because that's the default. But then there's also some things that just have random gibberish. Just like I mentioned before with the gibberish of this save code, a hex editor has similar gibberish that means something if you understand the file format, but otherwise it's just a bunch of random zeros and ones. And I'm using a hex editor because binary is hard to look at. A hex editor, instead of using 0 up to 1, it goes up to 10, and then it switches to letters and goes up to F. So the number 10 is represented by A, and the number 15 is represented by F. So The reason for 16 is because computers count by 2, whereas humans count by 10. Then the number 16 is a multiple of 2. So hexadecimal works well for computers, but it kind of works okay for humans because, binary is just way too many numbers, but with hexadecimal, it's not as bad. Anyways, on the right side, it's trying to show the text like human readable English characters, but they look like gibberish, and then on the hex, they do as well. So if I really understood how the map editor worked, I would maybe know that I can change this number 34, and again, this is just a fake example, but maybe I could change it to a zeros, and maybe I know that will break the map editor, but it will still work in the real game. So that's how they protect their maps. The problem is I don't necessarily know what they did to protect their map, so I can't necessarily fix it. But if I go back to the map editor, you can see it still says it's loading regions, but it's only loaded 90,000 regions out of, I don't know how many, that looks like billions. So obviously something's wrong here because the map should have loaded in like 5-10 seconds and it's basically crashed. So I'm not going to be able to use the map editor, so I'm going to have to hack it a different way. So let me open up this file in a hex editor. Here it is. So Heroic Origins, the extension is W3X, but if I look at the very beginning of the file, it has the letters MPQ. A lot of files, but not all, because any company can make up their own file format. A lot of them at the very beginning will have the name of the file format. And sometimes it's proprietary, or sometimes it's something that everybody knows about. So MPQ is something proprietary to Blizzard. But if I went to Google and I searched for MPQ editor, and I could even add Warcraft 3 on there so I don't get StarCraft or Diablo or something else. They're all probably really similar though. I could find a program to download that will help me edit this file. Now, because Warcraft is an old game, then some of these websites might not be maintained anymore. Their websites might be really old. Programs that they host might be old, or maybe when you click to download, it doesn't even work. Hopefully, if the community revives a little bit, then that'll be fixed. So it may take you multiple Google searches to find what you're looking for. But I've already downloaded one, so let me just open that up. And actually, first I'll show you a different tool I have. So I also have a deprotection tool. So right here it's called deprotect. I'm going to click browse, and I'm going to pick this Heroic Origins and hit OK. Now, the purpose behind this is it's supposed to try to figure out what the original programmer did to protect their map, and it's supposed to undo it. But if I click deprotect here, unfortunately, it's going to say it failed. So there are multiple versions of deprotectors, but the problem with this type of approach is the programmers are coming up with ways to protect their maps as quickly as hackers are coming up with ideas for how to deprotect. So the deprotect program is going to work on some maps, but not on others because it has to figure out which specific technique it did. And that's why it has all these different options. But as a hacker, in order to know which options to use, you would really have to understand the Warcraft 3 map format really well. You'd have to read a lot of tutorials online and figure those things out to know how to deprotect something. And every map's going to be different. So even though these deprotect tools are supposed to be just user-friendly, do it quick, they're not always going to work. There are a lot of forums online, so I'll just quickly show a list of them. These are places if you're wanting help with Warcraft map editing and modding. These are websites you should try out. So this top one, I believe it just is a place to mostly download maps. And then this one I think is the same. But Hive Workshop is a popular one, and it has more like community links where you can go to Discord or forums, etc. So if you search on these forums or ask questions or look at the tutorials or resources, it might have ways for you to protect, deprotect, etc. And under like these packs and tools and code, these even give you extra code that you can import into your custom map so you don't have to start from scratch. So for example, that other tower defense that we were just looking at that I'm hacking here, I showed you that it has a saved profile that is remembered from game to game. Most likely the coder did not actually make that himself. He probably came in here to resources and packs and or maybe tools and found some code that somebody else had written, and he just imported that into his map editor. So I'm actually a little bit sad that maps are protected. I understand that authors don't want people to cheat and also don't want the unlicensed modded copies of their maps to be distributed because that could kind of ruin their internal community for their map. But at the same time, I think it's really useful for programmers to learn by reading other people's code and looking at other people's maps and how they did it. So I wish that there was a way to protect the gaming community, but also allow the programmers to learn from each other. And I guess these community forums is kind of the best option, but maybe if there was a way to detect when a map was hacked or modded so that gamers that are serious about playing the correct version could avoid the hacked versions, then maybe maps wouldn't have to be protected anymore. So hopefully Blizzard does that sometime. But anyways, a few other websites, w3reforged.com, warcraft3.info, worldeditortutorials.helper.net. This one's actually really good also, and wc3edit.net. So some places you could check out if you're wanting to read either how to deprotect or how to make your own maps. But like I said, the deprotect didn't work, but I do already have an MPQ editor, and we discussed how this file is an MPQ editor. So I'm going to use that. First of all, I need to make sure Warcraft is not running with that game loaded, and it's not in my toolbar right now, so I'm safe. The reason why is because the MPQ editor, Warcraft locks the file while it's being played, and the MPQ editor will not be able to read it while it's locked. So here's my hacked folder, which the game is not yet hacked. This is just a copy of the game, but it will be hacked soon. So I'm going to open this in the MPQ editor, and it first wants me to select a list file, and it doesn't have anything in the option, so I'm just going to do an auto detect. The list file basically tells it inside of the archive which section of the archive file contains each small file, because an archive is going to have a list of maybe 20 files inside of it, which is going to look just like this custom map we created. So the list file tells it the location of each of these smaller files inside the larger file. So because it's been protected, it doesn't have like a list file. So that's why I have to tell it to auto detect. And generally it doesn't matter which one I choose, but so I'll just pick this one. Now, so it's able to read all of these files, but again, this has been protected. So there's going to be something wrong with some of these files. Maybe some of these files don't actually even exist. So for example, under the size, if there's one that's like really big, like this one, then maybe that file doesn't actually exist, but the list file, which is like a dictionary telling it where each file location is, maybe that's been corrupted to make it think that this extra file is there. Or maybe these files extensions are not supposed to be .xxx. Maybe they're supposed to be something else. So it's going to be a little bit confusing trying to figure out what each of these files means, even if you understand the Warcraft file format, because it's been intentionally corrupted to protect it. And for someone that's never coded with Warcraft 3, then obviously you're not going to understand any of it anyways. But like if you try to follow a tutorial or ask questions online or look at a guide, the guide's not going to work very well when the map's been protected and the files have been corrupted. But what I'm going to do, extract whole archive. It says it's going to take a lot of disk space. I don't care. I think somewhere in the settings it says where it's going to extract to, but I just remember it's under dtemp, deprotect work. So these are all of the files that it just extracted. Now I'm just going to search all of these files for specific code that I'm looking for. So I'm going to pick this folder and I'm going to open up Visual Studio Code, because this is a tool I like just for searching a bunch of files at once. So I'll do File, Open Folder, paste that folder in and hit Select. Okay, so the left side I'll see all my files here, but if I click the search icon, I can type something I want to search for. So I forgot to highlight this when the game was open, but when I typed in the cheat code, the greed is good, it put this error message on the screen. It said detect players using cheats. And then afterwards it said something like, you lose, the game will now exit. Well, I know that that particular message is not something built into the regular part of Warcraft. It's something specific to the custom map I was playing. So for example, the game itself for Warcraft is going to be under program files. So Warcraft 3. So somewhere in here is the code for all of the game. But if I were to search this folder for this text, it's probably not going to find it, because this is a code that Blizzard wrote. It's not specific to the tower defense that the different programmer wrote. And the reason I'm looking for a specific string of text is that's the easiest thing to search for when you want to start hacking something, because it's something that is going to be human readable inside of the code. So for example, let's say that they had some code in there that was like, if, player gold is greater than, like maybe that's how they're trying to figure out if I'm cheating, then quit game. Something like this, right? Well, I'm not going to know exactly how they're detecting that I'm cheating. So for me to try to search for this code is going to be difficult. But also, this is the original code, but code gets compiled down. So once it gets compiled, it's a bunch of zeros and ones because it's something that the computer can understand rather than what the human can understand. So if I search for like the word gold inside of, like an executable exe, if I'm thinking that that's a variable name, it's probably not going to find it because it's been compiled down. I would need the original source code, and I'm not going to get that unless I break into the company's servers and download it, and then I'm going to go to jail. So I'm not going to be able to search the code very easily. There are tools that are called decompilers that will change the zeros and ones back to the original, C++, and that could be a starting point. But I want to go with the easiest option first, and usually strings like this, even if the code is compiled down to zeros and ones, there's usually a way to search for the original strings because they don't really get compiled down. So I'm going to copy this detect players using cheats, and I'm not going to search the Warcraft code, but instead I'm going to search the map code. So that was in the C temp deprotect work that came from the MPQ editor where we extracted. And the MPQ editor was able to extract the files for the most part because the protection on the map, they can't corrupt it too much because the game itself still needs to be able to play. They're just trying to break the map editor so that a programmer can't modify it. So they're only able to corrupt it a small amount. So that's why the MPQ editor is still able to read it. So I've opened that folder, and I can see all the files here. I'm going to click search, and I'm going to paste in the detect players using cheat. So I see that there are 4 places that this is used. If I look at the first one, it looks like this is just a string variable, and the variable name is 1840. If I look at the next one, I've got another string variable, and the name of the variable is 2804. So I bet if I search for this 2804, or any of the 4 options, any of the 4 variables, I can find where that variable is used. So it shows that it's defined here, but it shows it's used in this .j file. Okay, so here I can see call display text this string for all players. So this is essentially saying, tell all the players that somebody was cheating. And so I could finish reading the code inside of this function. It looks like it's going to say another string, 2805. I could check and see what message that is. Then it's going to execute a trigger called check lose. So I'm going to assume that that's going to like quit me out of the game or something. So I could search for this trig b actions to see what calls this function, or I could search for this check lose to see what happens next. But first, before I start analyzing this code, I already kind of have a guess as what I could possibly do, right? So if this lose is going to quit me out of the game, maybe I could just comment out this one line of code, and that might be enough. Or wherever this trigger gets called, maybe I could, well, actually I can see it right here, trig b actions. Maybe I could comment out where that gets called, something like that. But first, because there were multiple places where the cheats were detected, I think I want to see which of these 4 is the correct place, because maybe there's multiple types of cheats that they're checking with different ways. So the easiest way to know if you try to hack something, to know if your hack is working, is you want to change something that's going to render on the screen and see if it visually changes. So since I know this text gets drawn on the screen, I can just add something onto here like, AI gamer. And then if I play the game and that name pops up, then I know it's using my updated files that I've hacked instead of the original base game. So I know that my code that I've injected into the game is working. So this isn't actual code, this is just a string, it's just text. But by modifying it, I can see if the text changes. So in this case, since there's 4 of them, I'm just gonna put maybe like a -1 and a -2 and a -3. This way, based on which one appears on the screen, I can know which of the 4 places I should actually be modifying. So I'm going to save this file, and I'm going to undo this .j file. I'm going to undo whatever I changed because I was just messing around. And also something nice about Visual Studio Code. So on the bottom here, it says that it's in JASS language mode. If you go to extensions and you search for JASS, it'll show you plugins that people have made for the JASS language. So if you install one of those plugins, it's going to make it easier for you to understand the code, because that's what's causing this to be highlighted in blue or yellow or green. So that makes it easier to read. Okay, so I've modified each of these strings in this war3 map.wts file, but it's not yet into the MPQ file. So I'm going to open up the MPQ editor again, and open up the hacked folder, Heroic Origins. And then I'm going to drag this new file that I've modified in here. So if I go to Visual Studio Code, I can right click and say Reveal in Explorer, and it'll show me exactly where the file is. And then in the MPQ editor, I can just drag the file. So now it says it already exists in the archive. Do you want to replace it? Yes. And then I'm going to close the archive so that it's not locked, so that Warcraft 3 can view it. And this is where it was important that I had made a copy of the map in the hacked folder, because if something goes wrong, I still have a copy of the original that I can switch back to if I need to. So I'm going to open up Warcraft again and load up that game. But instead of finding it under download, like before, where all my maps are, I'm going to open up the hacked folder, and there's just one file here, and I'll choose this map. It takes a second to load. I'll choose easy, and now I'm going to try my cheat code. Now, I have not hacked the game yet, so it still should quit me out of the game, but I'm hoping it will tell me which of the 4 strings, so I know where the code is. Okay, so it says -3. So I'll quit out and open up Visual Studio Code again. And now, detect players using cheats. I know it's going to be the one that was the -3. So 2806 is the variable that it was rendering on the screen. So let's find its code. So this says trigger C, show this text on the screen, quit them out of the game. And let me see where this function is used, trigger C. Okay, so if I was going to search for it by hitting like Control F and pasting it in, but it's on the same screen already. So once I highlight it, I can see it's highlighted down here. So init trig C says register a trigger based on a player state event. So that essentially is saying like monitor for something to occur on the player and notify me when this thing occurs. So then the parameters tell it what it's looking for. So it says player 10, it's checking the gold in the first line and the lumber in the second line, and it's checking if it's greater than or equal to the number 1. So it looks like player 10 is supposed to always have 0 gold, because as soon as it notices it's equal to 1 or higher, then that's when this trigger is going to execute these actions. And that's a little strange because I don't know that player 10 is necessarily me, because each player is a different number. So if I'm playing with a bunch of friends, I might be player 1, someone else might be player 2. So I wonder if player 10 is maybe a neutral player that's controlled by the AI, because in the map editor you can specify that certain players are going to be AI or human. And I wonder if that player 10 is somehow like allied with me or something. And maybe there's a setting that says we have shared gold. You know, I don't know, something like that. That's something weird, because I don't know why the cheat code would cause player 10 to get gold. I would expect it to give me gold, but I would think that I would be player 0. Or if I was playing with a friend, I would be 0 and they would be 1. So it's a little odd to me, you know, specifically the player 10. But regardless, we don't have to understand why this works, because we already know that when this happens, it's going to display the text on the screen and quit me out of the game. So let's just double check what this check lose does. So check lose is a trigger, and then it has these actions. So this action says display string to the player, sleep for 3 seconds. I'm not sure why it's doing that. Pause all units. So that makes sense. If all the units are paused, then I can't interact with any of my units anymore. And then so the BJ stands for Blizzard JAS. So JAS is the programming language and B is Blizzard. But anyways, it's saying custom defeat, and it's doing it to players 0 through 5. So this is a 6-player game. So this makes sense to me that it's saying all 6 players that are allied together, they all lost, basically, is what the defeat is doing. So I don't know what this string is showing. We could look it up real quick, but it's probably something like the game is going to exit, because I think I remember it saying something like that. I guess just you lose. Okay, so we know we don't want this to occur. And I'll just go back to the original string I was looking for. So this is where it gets rendered. We know we don't want the lose to execute. I guess it doesn't hurt anything if it says we lost, as long as it doesn't actually quit us out of the game. But may as well not have any of these things happen. So I'm just going to make it so that trigger C actions never occurs. So if the events that it's looking for is for the gold to get greater than 1, I'm just going to delete these events, because that will make it so that this trigger never happens, because there's nothing monitoring for when that trigger should execute. So I've saved that file, War3 map, without those 2 lines of code. And I'm just going to put it into the MPQ editor. So find the file, here it is. Now this one is in the scripts folder. So previously I was in the work folder. That's where most of the files were, but this one's in the scripts. So I need to pay attention to that. So I'll open my file. So I'll drag my new file in, overwrite yes, file close. Now I can go into Warcraft and load that map again. And I expect it to work this time unless there's a second section of code that's checking for cheats. I'll go to the hacked folder, pick my map. Now I didn't explain the screen before, but since we talked about the players in the code, I think it's useful. So you'll notice here this number 1, that's what team I'm on. But because I'm in the very first slot, so team 2 is like the computer that we're against. But then it has this extra green computer. So all of these are AIs. And the way that these line up, I'm guessing that brown is the monsters that I'm supposed to kill. Red is the monsters that my teammate on the second slot is supposed to kill, because they kind of all line up. And then this extra player here, I don't know what his purpose is, but I believe it was players like 0 through 5, so that it said were the ones that got defeated when we cheated. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's, I think, what's going on here. So if I click this force 1, it keeps moving me down to the next slot. So now I would be the player 5 instead of player 0. So yeah, 0 through 5, and then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm still not entirely sure why it was looking at player 10, like why this pink guy is the one that is checking to see if they have extra gold. That's strange. So, and maybe this is not 6 through 10, because I don't know who this green one is. So something a little weird, but I don't need to understand the code to hack it necessarily. I just need to see if the change I made fixes it, right? So I'll start the game, and it takes a while to load as before. So what we want to pay attention to is our gold and our wood. So 1210. So if I type in that command, greed is good, and those numbers go up and it doesn't quit me out of the game, then the hack is working. So I'm going to click easy mode. Actually, I should have done hard mode. That would have been more interesting, but greed is good. Okay, so it says cheat enabled. That's, I think, built into the normal Warcraft engine. Not really part of the custom app, but you can see the gold went up and the wood went up. So definitely working. So let's see what I can build. This could be kind of fun. Now I'm really wishing I had done the hard mode, because beating easy with cheats is not really very interesting. But I know typically at the beginning of the game, for example, you're not going to get a tier 3 tower. So I'm going to roll this big key here that costs 50 wood. Normally you don't have enough wood for that, so I can get a tier 3 tower. So this gave me 2 purples and 2 greens. I don't want a purple because that's a tier 2. I'll roll again until I get an orange, which is a tier 3. Okay, right there, tier 3. Oh, it says I don't have enough gold. So even though I did that command, the gold is 30,500. So on that, I can do greed is good a second time. Or if I just type a bunch of numbers afterwards, that's how much gold and wood to give me. Oh, I'm about to lose. Even with cheating, I'm going to lose. Okay. Hopefully he starts killing stuff quick. I've got 10 seconds. Okay, I'm good now. So it says now I have 29 monsters to kill out of 35. So I spent too much time explaining and not enough time actually building towers. But that would be embarrassing to lose on easy mode when I'm cheating. But with that greed is good, when I put a bunch of 9s afterwards, you can see the wood and the gold both gave me a whole bunch of 9s. So that's the hack. I mean, now I could essentially upgrade all these things as much as I want, where normally, I mean, I guess not as much as I want at some point. There are no more upgrades because the map editor, you know, the programmer that made this didn't design it for anything more, because at that point you basically beat the game. Once you're not supposed to be able to unlock those until right now I'm on wave 2. You know, I think it's wave 30 is when the game is over, when you beat it. So, you know, the highest tier that I've just unlocked, probably you're not supposed to be able to unlock it until wave 20. And then some of these, they're unlocked, or they're locked still because I have not completed the quest. So I have to build 5 tier 1 towers, and I only have 2 tier 3 towers. So I'm not going to bother to actually play the whole game, but that's pretty exciting. I was able to hack it, so I could basically have as many orange tier 3 towers as I want without, so I've got 4 tier 3s now. Let's do a few more. So yeah, I've got unlimited gold. And obviously there's other ways I could hack this map. This is just one particular type of hack. It was free gold and free wood. There's other hacks we could have done. But yeah, I'll have to play this again now that it's hacked and see if I can beat the insane mode, because I'm sure without cheating I would not be able to. So there's, okay, I've got 6 tier 3 towers. They're all the oranges. So hopefully you enjoyed that hacking tutorial. Let me know what other games you'd like to see me hack in the future. And write me in the comments below if you have any questions about how I did this, if there's anything I didn't explain very well. And if you do play Warcraft 3, send me a message and maybe I'll queue up in a game with you sometime. Thanks for watching.